Namaste. Again today I'm going to talk about the coronavirus, but the coronavirus in the light of Sri Aurobindo. Now, as you know, Sri Aurobindo was a great poet, yogi, revolutionary, much before the Mahatma Gandhi had advocated the removal of the British by force if necessary, and a great philosopher. And he wrote so many great books which are today of such great value to India. The foundations of Indian culture, the life divine, the synthesis of yoga. And in every book, he spoke about the occult forces. Now, behind every world event, there are forces at play. Whatever happens in the world, especially on the political side, on the human side, there are forces behind it. This is nothing new. In the Bhagavad Gita, in all the great scriptures, the Buddha says, the world is Maya. Look behind Maya. What's happening behind Maya? What are the forces that move men, that moves events? These are very important. Now, if you look at the coronavirus in the light of Sri Aurobindo, in the light of this ancient knowledge, there is a force behind the coronavirus. Now, again, according to Sri Aurobindo, there are two kinds of forces. Forces which are dharmic, which are for the good of humanity, which help humanity to grow, to go towards evolution, a proper evolution of the world. And there are adamic forces, asuric forces, which try to, downsize the world, bring the world down, bring evil and disharmony. And I believe that behind the coronavirus, there is an evil forces. There is an anti-evolutionary force. There is an asuric force. There are asuric forces which are behind the coronavirus. And we see that with the coronavirus, which has a very small impact on the health of the world. If you look at India, less than 150 cases, 0.000.1% of India is affected by the coronavirus. So far, there are 3 deaths, maybe only one of them directly due to the coronavirus. So it has a very small health impact on the world, much less than cancer. Cancer or heart attacks, or road accidents kills millions of people in the world, a million times more than the coronavirus. So, what are the asuric forces behind the coronavirus, and what do they bring with them? Of course, disharmony. We see the world at disharmony today. Distrust. People are starting to mistrust each other. Even in small communities, we see that people are mistrusting each other. People are pointing fingers. Oh, are you a bearer of the coronavirus? Are you going to infect me? And of course, damage. Great economic damage is happening in the world right now. Airlines are going bankrupt. Companies are going bankrupt. Governments might go towards bankruptcy too. People individually are suffering so much financially, economically because of the coronavirus. This is a sign of the Asura. This is a sign the greater damage done to the world is not health-wise. It is psychologically wise. It is inner-wise. The total disharmony that's happening in the world now, everything is shutting down. Now, we need to look deeper. Who is behind the coronavirus? But now we know that it emerged from China. There is no doubt. Whether it is because the Chinese people eat everything that is moving and alive, from snakes to bats to worms to rats, everything. And these are killed live in front of them before they buy them in markets. So whether the coronavirus emerged from that wild, unquenchable thirst for eating anything alive, or whether it is biological, that it escaped from some laboratory, in a Chinese laboratory, and then propagated first in China, then in Asia, then in the world. Nevertheless, we have to look at China. Now, the first sign is that the world needs to relocate, because everything comes from China today. I see in France, for instance, that 95% of antibiotics, come from China. Auto parts come from China. Computer parts, mobiles, Apple, all the Apples, are made in China today. So the first sign is, the first warning is that the world needs to relocate, to delocalize from China and bring it to India, for instance, which is a much more democratic, much more Western-loving country, much more liberal country, much more spiritual country than China. And the second thing is that, at least in India, we have noticed that the Chinese have a thirst for control over the world, whether it is the sea lanes from the China Sea to the Indian Ocean, or whether it is the new Silk Road, that is crossing the Himalayas through Pakistan and coming to the Pakistan port of Gwadar to export all the Chinese goods onto the world, to control the world politically, economically. So there is also, without putting too much of a judgment, an Asuric element in China that has been manifesting for quite some time, and people have not been conscious of it. So again, if we look at the coronavirus from the occult point of view, definitely we have to look at China. Now, the Dalai Lama, we very much love the Dalai Lama. He's a great human being, he's a great yogi, and personally, myself and my wife have a, tremendous affection for him. He often spoke about the black karma of the Chinese, because the Chinese not only killed nearly 1 million Tibetans, in their thirst again for conquest, for taking over that buffer which was for centuries between China and India, a peaceful Buddhist non-violent buffer. Now, not only they killed 1 million Chinese, directly or indirectly, but Mao Zedong, who was full of megalomania, killed nearly 20 million Chinese people, of his own people, whether in his crazy thirst for more, steel, or whether in concentration camps, 20 million people. So there is a black karma of China. Now, is this black karma hitting China back now through the coronavirus? We need to look at that too. And finally, I would like to say that, right, we should fight the coronavirus, with all precautions, with health precautions, with quarantine if necessary, but it needs to be fought also spiritually and occultly, on an occult level. And only India can do that. Only India has the knowledge to do that. And my appeal is to all the great yogis of India now. There are so many great yogis in India now. Spoke about the Dalai Lama, of course, then Sri Ravi Shankar, then Jayagi Sadhguru, then Amritanandamayi of Kerala, then Guru Mai, then the Shankaracharya. So many great gurus. They should assemble together. It's a time for them to unite, to show to the world and to India they are unified in their fight against the coronavirus. And they can perform great pujas, great yajnas, great prayers, which will have an impact. They will have an impact on this coronavirus. And finally, individually, we also can fight this coronavirus on an inner level. And I'm going to read to you a prayer of the mother. The mother was in Pondicherry, the spiritual companion of Sri Aurobindo. She was a great yogini also. And she wrote a prayer against the asura, against the adverse forces. And I'm going to read it to you. In the name of the divine, for the sake of the divine, with the strength of the divine, to all adverse forces and beings, to all adverse forces and beings, I order you to quit this place at once and for all. I order you, in the name of the divine, to quit this place once for all. I order you, in the name of the divine, to help the coronavirus threat, both physical and inner, to go from the world. Namaste.